Okay, welcome to the fourth and final Pong tutorial. And wow, if you've made it this far, then you've done so much. You've actually made a game that works, which is no small feat. Now, you might be looking at the screen now and be seeing double and be thinking, did I miss a step here? Well, you see, guys, if you made it this far, then you're into the level 4 territory. And when I do level 4 tutorials, I am showing you the code. You can see it on the screen, but I'm no longer doing step by step. Some of you are going to love that, and some of you are going to hate that. On the plus side, you don't have to listen to a tutorial that's quite as long. And on the downside, you know what? There's some stuff you're going to have to figure out for yourself on how things work. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm just going to run the basic game in its final version so you can see what that looks for. And again, my goals at the start were to have a basic Pong game that you could play against the computer and that it would get progressively more difficult as you got really good at the game. So let's see if I accomplish that. So you can see I've made a title page here, and that's what you can see so far. We can even make this full screen to make it a little bit better here. And we're going to go ahead and give this game a whirl. And I'm not the best Pong player in the world, but I don't always beat my game, especially round two. And you might even make a game that's impossible depending on how you've coded it. So let's see if it is a challenge. Okay, so we're at three. Still keeping track of round one right now. Nothing's changed. This is all based on what we did in tutorials 1 to 3. And there we go. 5-0. A little bit too easy, I think, for round one. I could always make that a little bit harder. But for testing purposes, I think it's easier to make round one really easy because look what's about to happen. Yikes. Round two. Yeah. All right, good times. Here we go. Let's give it a try. The computer has a huge advantage here. And you can see, even sometimes when you do hit it, ooh, got it that time. And again, ooh, got it. It's not impossible to beat the computer here, but he's moving so much quicker towards the ball, and you have such a small paddle that I may or may not be able to score a point here, but we will try. I've never actually beat this, although sometimes I do score points, so I know it's not impossible. Okay, well, this round, the computer got the best of me, and he's taunting me at this point. But yeah, I have scored points before. I think I've got four before the computer beat me, but maybe you guys have faster reflexes and can do that. So that is the final game here. And so I do have a game that's working and I'm going to exit out of this so that I can show you some of the code. I'm going to highlight a little bit of the code behind that. How did I make the paddle smaller? How did I go about creating a different set of effects, the speed of the ball? I'll give you some hints, but again, I'm not going to walk you step by step, so this is a little bit different. Okay, so the first thing, it looks like we have twice as much code here, doesn't it? All right, you might be like, oh my gosh, do I have to drag all that code out again? And imagine if you were typing this code, how long that would take. All right, so there are some nice things to keep in mind. Number one, you might want to take your code from tutorial 3, right click on it, duplicate it, and move it side by side. That's going to save you a lot of time. So that's my first tip. Okay, but you'll also notice that there are a few different things here. This is not when the green flag is clicked over here. It's when I receive something. Okay, so you might remember at the end of tutorial 3, I told you to broadcast something for the first time. I told you to broadcast a message that says player 1 wins. Well, that is like half of the magnet. The other half of the magnet that it's looking for is up here of when I receive it. So this is sending a message directly to this. And this whole set of code, because it's attached to that, is only happening if player 1 wins. And the way I have this Pong game set up is if the computer wins, well, it just stops after round 1. You have to get better at Pong before you can advance to round 2. So, okay, if player 1 wins, we're going to get ready for round 2. We're saying a message, that's all that is. We're waiting for 2 seconds. We're saying the first to 5 wins, and again, we wait. And the wait, we didn't use too much, but that is under control, that you can see that. Now I'm resetting the scores of variables, computer score, and player 1 score back to 0. Okay, so that's happening here. We're resetting the ball back to the middle. We're pointing it in a direction of -45. That's all very similar to this. Now we have a forever, and we have basically a forever at this point where it's moving 13 steps. Now back here it moved 10 steps. That's why this game just got harder. It's moving a lot faster. Okay? Now, you might have noticed when we go back here, this used to say something different. This used to say forever. Now it does not. Because you can just imagine, think logically for a minute, what would happen if we had a forever move 10 steps and a forever move 13 steps? The computer would be like, can you make up your mind already? What do you actually want me to do? And it would try to do both, but it would look like a disaster. So a piece that's missing here that I haven't shown you step by step was taking away that forever that was back here and putting in a repeat until. Now, what is the repeat until condition? It's repeating until first round is equal to false. Here, first round is true. So the first time you click to load the game, it's true, and this is going to get done. It is going to do this basic code. But when somebody gets to 5, first round is set to false. So guess what that means? Because these ifs are nested within this repeat, because they're dependent on it, when first round becomes false, which happens here and happens here. If either of those conditions happen, it's going to kick right out of this and no longer do any of this code. That, if you understand that, is probably the hardest concept in this entire program. If you got that, congratulations. If not, ask me. That's why I'm doing these tutorials, so that I'm around the class and I'm available to help you when you need help. So going back to this side now, we have a very similar looking condition of if it's less than 6. Very similar stuff in here. Exactly the same. Exactly the same as the code before it. Exactly the same here. Same thing here. Only difference is the messages are slightly different because this is the end of the game. Now you might have noticed that there was a different screen here when we first pressed go. So if I end that and restart it, you got a different message, kind of a splash screen. I'm just going to show you really quickly where that came from. If you go to stage and you go to backdrops, then you can have different stages, painting new backdrops, choosing from the library or painting one completely on your own. And you can say whatever message you want. I wanted to do a title screen here, but you can see there's scripts here as well. I want to do a title screen that basically introduced the game. It's interesting if you take a look at the screen here on the side where you've got the ball and the variables, but when you actually run the game, you don't get those, okay? So the ball actually is still bouncing around. The variables are still there on that splash screen. So how did I make it look like they were gone? Well, let's go back to these scripts. I had to tweak some of these scripts, didn't I? Take a look at player one paddle. I asked it to hide it. I asked it to hide the variables too. Okay? Because I knew that at the very start of the game, when that splash screen showed, I knew the splash screen would look really bad if these things were kind of bouncing around and distract people. Okay? Now, you make this splash screen as creative as you want. And by the way, something I'm going to talk to you now about some things that I haven't put in this game that if you can put in this game, you're going to be guaranteed an A+. If you get this far and you go beyond what I do, guaranteed A+. Okay? And this is a big portion of Term 2 ICT, so I hope you go for it. But one of the things that are missing here are instructions. There's nothing about like how to move the paddle. There's nothing about, the fact that there's 2 rounds. If you can come up with messages by using these backdrops that explain the control and the objectives, then I'm going to be super, super impressed with that. Okay? You might do a whole different back screen if the user actually wins the whole game. They should feel some sense of accomplishment. Maybe you have fireworks on your backdrop. Okay, but something exciting, like, okay, because it's a hard game. You can beat the computer, but you saw I lost 5-0 in round two. Okay, so if you can actually beat that game, then that's amazing, and it should feel amazing. So I would want to create a whole new. I would probably see what they had in the library, see if there was any kind of fireworks or something exciting that I could do to be able to show that. Okay, but if not, I'd paint it myself, or I'd download it from Google Images and import it. There's lots of ways you can do that. Okay, so let's cancel that for now. But just some ideas. Some other ideas. How could you make this game even better than it is right now? How could you make it more interesting? Well, you could decide to change the paddles completely. Right now, they're just black rectangles. Well, they could actually be sprites. You could actually choose it for it to be a sprite and for those to look totally different than the regular game of Pong. Okay? That's a challenge I give you if you want it. What else could you do? You could change the ball, the look of the ball. You could change the number of balls. Well, holy, how hard would this game be if on round two or round three, what if you made a whole new round? What if on one of those rounds you had to keep track of two balls bouncing everywhere instead of one? That, to me, is an incredibly cool addition to this game and will score you incredibly high marks. But even if you can get to the point that I'm at now, where you have this, where you have your two rounds, and the second round is harder than the first, then you're going to be in the level 4 range, so don't worry about that. Another addition I've seen people do in the past, they've had objects in the middle here, like little rectangles, let's say. The ball actually bounces off of those rectangles if it hits it and totally changes the path of the ball. Wow, that's cool. That's amazing. And that's a lot of code to think about. I've seen people change it so that it's top to bottom instead of left to right. And trust me, that involves a lot of logic and code. Okay, so I'm trying to give you some ideas now of how can you make your game of Pong stand out at the end of the day. Okay, another thing you could do is make it a two-player Pong game. Although in a way, that's going to be a lot of code change. You could do it as a side project as well and show me that you figured out how to do two-player Pong. So those are the ideas. I think I've gone through all of the additions here without going step by step, but just kind of talking about them. I'm just going to flip through the rest of the sprites to make sure that there's nothing new that I haven't shown you. Here, I guess, you're receiving things like switching. When backdrop switches to backdrop 1, then I'm asking it to show the variables. So all that's saying is that's how, when I originally hid the variables up here, when it switched to backdrop 1, which is the main backdrop here on the stage, I asked it to show those things. So that's all that's doing. That's kind of new. Let's take a look over here. Oh, the speed of the ball. Glad I have a chance to show you this. Before we had in our original code, we had it changing gliding 0.4 seconds to the destination of the ball. Now it's taking 0.1 second to get to the ball. So it's moving so much faster towards the ball. That's what's making it hard. And again, how did I pull that off? Well, this repeat that used to say forever, okay, no longer says forever. It says repeat until it's not the first round, okay? Because once it's not the first round, I want you to do something else. And in this case, I want you to move faster, is what that's saying, okay? And then I think that's pretty much it, guys. I really look forward to seeing your finished products of Pong. See if somebody can come up with a whole new invention or a whole new look to the game. You guys are really creative, and I can't wait to see what you can do. So I hope these 4 kind of lengthy tutorials helped you out. But you can imagine if I just stood at the class and taught this once, how difficult that would be to take in. So however far you get, congratulations, because if you're listening to me right now, then you have coded a very complex game. And again, think back to those other games that you might play outside of school, whether it's Minecraft or whether it's Fallout or Call of Duty. Think of the amount of code and communication that must go into that. Okay? So exciting stuff. After this, you get to move on to making your own custom game completely from scratch, no tutorials, and that's going to be really exciting to see what you guys can come up with. So thanks again for listening and watching these tutorials. And again, I'm always available for help when you need me. All right, take care. Bye-bye now.